She was the most dazzling princess of the royal family, the rightful heir to the empire, yet she was brutally murdered on the eve of her coronation. The masterminds of her demise were none other than the very people she cherished most: the sister she doted on, the lover she trusted with all her heart, the nephew she had carefully raised, and the colleague she considered a confidant. In the darkness of death, her heart seethed with defiance. She prayed to the gods for a second chance, vowing to reclaim everything that was stolen from her. When she opened her eyes again, she saw a little boy dangling a toy in front of her face. Seeing no reaction, the boy panicked and yelled for his mother. "Mommy, why isn't my sister moving?" Tears of guilt streamed down her mother Isabella's face. "It's all my fault. I let her stay in my belly for too long." Her father, Fernando, rushed to comfort them, his voice gentle but firm. "Even if Sylvia isn't all there, she will always be our most beloved treasure." Who could have imagined that the formidable woman who once had countless nobles and royals eating out of the palm of her hand would be reborn as a helpless infant, even suspected by everyone around her of being a simple-minded fool? Her new life passed in an agonizingly slow crawl. Finally, when Sylvia was 6 months old, she heard that her vile, despicable nephew had ascended to the throne. She was so furious she nearly crushed the baby bottle in her hand. At age 3, she overheard the maids gossiping and learned that her treacherous sister and her heartless ex-boyfriend were about to be married. At 5, she heard that Duke Wellington, that snake, was rapidly climbing the ladder of power. Sylvia's tiny body trembled with rage, her heart filled with indignation. Why did all her enemies get to live such prosperous, successful lives, while she was trapped in this small, weak body, completely unable to enact her revenge? Thankfully, her father appeared just in time to pull her into a tight embrace, gently soothing her until the fury that threatened to consume her finally subsided. She could only comfort herself with a silent promise. "It's okay. I'll bide my time. One day I will make them all pay a terrible price for what they did." And that day was finally about to arrive. Lucia! Her cousin was pestering Sylvia to go to a party at the academy. Sylvia had initially refused without a second thought, but that was before she heard that young Master Stewart would be there. Sylvia's head snapped around. As Lucia excitedly described this remarkable young man, Stewart Wellington, the youngest son of Duke Wellington, a strange, cunning smile crept across Sylvia's otherwise placid face. Now that's a familiar name. In that moment, she felt a sharp thrill. Her long-awaited plan for revenge was about to begin. This Duke Wellington was nothing more than a man from a minor noble house in a remote border town. He had climbed the ranks by shamelessly riding the coattails of his powerful wife's family, becoming a so-called self-made man in the eyes of the public. In reality, he was just an opportunist who had married into power. Sylvia suddenly remembered that by the time she died in her previous life, Wellington's 2 children with his wife were already in school. At his wife's age, it was unlikely she could have another child. That meant this mysterious younger son had to be his illegitimate child from an affair. At that thought, a confident smirk played on Sylvia's lips. This child, she realized, could be the perfect springboard for her return to the pinnacle of power. The carriage came to a slow stop, and Sylvia gracefully stepped out. She looked around and saw nothing but a crowd of clueless children, running and playing. The so-called important people were nowhere in sight. A little blonde girl sneered, making the first move. "Look, another one here for Master Stewart." A blue-haired girl next to her chimed in. Yeah. I can't believe even a dummy has her sights set on Master Stewart." The red-haired girl leading them spoke with an air of superiority. "This is a gathering for nobles, so of course the most distinguished people are invited. But whether those adults choose to grace us with their presence is another matter entirely." Listening to these children parrot their parents' phony high society talk, Sylvia found it amusing. But in an instant, she understood the hidden meaning. Stewart wasn't coming today. Just as Sylvia was feeling a wave of disappointment, the red-haired girl started bragging about her visit to the imperial palace. Sylvia had hoped to catch a scrap of useful political information, but all the girl talked about were the palace's ornate decorations and pavilions, nothing but pointless chatter. Sylvia was secretly glad she'd been playing the fool from the start. Otherwise, she'd have to waste her time and energy pretending to be impressed by these little braggarts. Disappointed, Sylvia was about to get up and leave the pointless gathering when the red-haired girl asked in a mock-scared voice, "Have you heard the legend of the pond at Niga Palace?" At his words, all the children's eyes widened. They all nodded, saying they'd heard the rumors from the adults. Someone whispered, "That's where Princess Stephanie killed herself. They say her ghost wanders there every night." Another added that if you stared into your own pond and chanted Princess Stephanie 3 times, you could make a wish in exchange for your soul. Hearing these absurd stories, Sylvia scoffed internally. How could they possibly know? The Stephanie I was, proud and unyielding, would never do something so cowardly. Her cousin Lucia asked with a curious face, "Why did Princess Stephanie kill herself?" The red-haired girl smugly answered, "Isn't it obvious? She tried to steal Princess Aileen's fiancé, but Lord Adonis was disgusted by her promiscuity and rejected her in public. She was so humiliated that she drowned herself in the Niga pond." Sylvia, who had been listening to it all as a joke, could no longer contain her anger. "That's complete nonsense," she snapped. "Adonis was Princess Stephanie's fiancé. Aileen was the one who stole him. Besides, Princess Stephanie liked strong, handsome men. It was Princess Aileen who was obsessed with pretty boys like Adonis. So there's no way Stephanie would have killed herself." The red-haired girl, never having been questioned before, was about to argue back when Sylvia's lips curled into a disdainful smirk. "The water in Niga Pond is only half as deep as an adult. Do you think Princess Stephanie was a shorty like you? How could she drown in there?" Thinking of the truth of her own death, a wave of hatred washed over Sylvia. Her hands clenched into tight fists, and she lost control, shouting, "The so-called drowning was just a cover-up, wasn't it?" For a moment, all the children were stunned into a deafening silence. After a few seconds, Sylvia realized she had said too much, but she was quick-witted and immediately came up with a plan to play the fool and bluff her way through. Just then, a luxurious carriage pulled up before them, and a cold voice cut through the silence. "Shut up!" A powerful-looking little boy stepped out of the carriage. His sharp gaze locked onto Sylvia, and with a swift motion, he drew his sword and pointed it directly at her. "You're the daughter of a merchant from the lower district. How do you know about things at the Imperial Palace?" Startled by this sudden turn of events, Sylvia's legs went weak and she fell to the ground, her eyes wide with innocent terror. The sudden confrontation silenced all the children, and every eye turned toward them. A pale-faced Lucia rushed forward to apologize on Sylvia's behalf. Stewart's face darkened as he yelled, "I'm asking her, not you!" His cold gaze refocused on Sylvia. "How do you know about the Niga pond and the palace?" A jolt of excitement went through Sylvia. Finally, my chance is here. When Stewart saw the girl wasn't speaking, he wondered if she was some admirer of Princess Stephanie, but then dismissed the idea as absurd. Meanwhile, Sylvia's mind was racing, trying to figure out how to handle this little brat. In her past life, Stephanie had been a master politician at the top of the food chain. Even the cunning old Duke Wellington had been no match for her. Wrapping this little kid around her finger would be a piece of cake. "Princess, how did you know you're not supposed to talk about it?" Sylvia began her performance. Stewart was captivated by her flawless acting and began to question his earlier assumptions. Could it be? Does she really have some connection to Princess Stephanie? Sylvia saw the flicker of curiosity in his eyes and beckoned him closer with her finger. "I'll tell you," she whispered. Then her tone shifted, and she shouted at the top of her lungs, "My mommy said I'm the cutest little princess, and she also said that anyone besides her who calls me a princess has to marry me." Hearing this, Stewart's face looked as if he'd just swallowed a million flies. Before he could recover, the girl asked, "So, are you going to marry me?" Stewart's face instantly turned beet red. All the other kids stared, their eyes wide as saucers. Stewart was so mortified he could have dug a hole and buried himself in it. But Sylvia grabbed his wrist, insisting he stay and chat. Stewart, having had enough, yanked his hand away. "I'm about to start at Vale Academy. I don't have time to play house with a fool." "Vale Academy?" Sylvia asked, her face a mask of curiosity. "That's right. A place you'll never get into." An unreadable smile touched Sylvia's lips. She hadn't planned on going there, but now she had changed her mind. Because Stewart was there. For 6 years, she had been trapped in this small body in a remote city. Now she finally had a breakthrough. "Stewart!" Sylvia called out to him again. The boy turned back impatiently. "What is it now?" Sylvia's face lit up with excitement. "I'm going to school with you." Early the next morning, Sylvia, accompanied by her family, arrived at Vale Academy to register. Though her parents and brother were reluctant to let her go, her mind was made up. She knew this was her best chance for revenge. Just then, an impatient voice cut through the noise. "Caroline, the entire school has a uniform. Why are you trying to be special?" A teacher stood with a displeased look on her face. Caroline, a thin, frail-looking girl, stood there helplessly, clutching the only 2 pitiful copper coins she had. People around them started whispering. Her family fell from grace a long time ago, yet she's still trying to squeeze her way into a noble academy. Is she hoping to land a rich husband? Sylvia couldn't stand to watch any longer. With a flick of her little hand, dozens of gold coins clattered onto the teacher's desk with a crisp sound. Give me 2 of the best sets. I want everything in my dorm to be uniform. Clutter hurts my eyes. Then, Sylvia turned to Caroline and gave her a playful wink. You're in room 201, right? You'd better listen to me and use this stuff. Caroline looked up, her eyes filled with shock and gratitude. Yes. After saying goodbye to her parents and brother, Sylvia walked through the school gates with her newfound friend without a single look back. Her family watched her small figure disappear, their eyes growing moist. Her father's voice was thick with emotion. Our baby is amazing. She made a friend on her very first day. Caroline held Sylvia's hand the whole way, thanking her for standing up for her. After all, no one dares to get close to an outcast like me. Hearing this, Sylvia felt a surge of anger. The real outcasts are the simple-minded idiots who only know how to suck up to the powerful and step on everyone else. Caroline, however, warned her to be careful. You don't want to offend the nobles. 90% of the students at Vale are nobles. The rest are either children of incredibly wealthy families or commoners with exceptional grades. The nobles rule this academy, and everyone else is just an ant in their shadow. You must never provoke them. A dismissive smile touched Sylvia's lips. But the academy is full of competition. Even if I don't provoke them, we're bound to clash sooner or later. At that, Caroline remembered the various competitions the academy held regularly. Winners received copper badges, and only by collecting a certain number of them could you get the chance to be an exchange student at the Imperial Capital Academy. The fight for copper badges was a life-or-death battle that transcended social status. Just then, Sylvia saw a large, bustling crowd up ahead. They were holding one of the copper badge competitions Caroline had just mentioned. Without a second thought, Caroline grabbed Sylvia's hand and pulled her into the crowd. I heard this is the easiest copper badge to win. Let's go give it a try. After a great deal of pushing and shoving, they finally got their hands on registration cards for the badge competition. Sylvia stared at the event listed on the card, lost in thought for a moment, while Caroline was already eagerly pulling her along, wanting to play a warm-up round. Suddenly, the noisy crowd quickly parted, creating a wide path. Sylvia shot her head up, her gaze cutting through the people to lock onto the newcomer, Stewart. He wore his usual expression of arrogance and disdain, as if the entire world was beneath him. Caroline turned pale with fright, her voice trembling as she urged Sylvia. Quick, get out of the way for Lord Stewart! But Sylvia didn't budge. She fearlessly met Stewart's gaze, even as Caroline next to her looked like she was about to have a heart attack. Stewart was puzzled. What's this silly girl doing here? Did she bribe her way in? He let out a contemptuous snort. You're in the welcoming competition? With that, Stewart snatched the registration card from Sylvia's hand, held it up high, and announced, In that case, why don't I be your opponent? Sylvia blinked her big, innocent eyes, a cold smile playing in her mind. This illegitimate son just served himself up on a platter. Saves me the trouble of finding him. Stewart thought she was challenging him. A smug grin on his face, he leaned in close to her ear and said in a taunting tone, An excellent hunter never complains about weak prey. Hearing the word prey, Sylvia couldn't help but laugh to herself. The chess match between Sylvia and Stewart was about to begin. Caroline leaned in anxiously. At least win one game. Don't make the loss too embarrassing. Sylvia, however, just casually toyed with a pawn in her hand. Seeing this, one of Stewart's lackeys sneered. That pawn he's holding is as useless as he is. Playful smile touched Sylvia's lips. How can a pawn be useless? At least it gets to be on the board. You two don't. The lackeys' faces turned red with anger. Stewart raised a hand to silence them. Don't forget, we're just here for the copper badge. The first game began. Stewart played each move with calm precision. Sylvia, on the other hand, looked like she was just fooling around, either randomly capturing his pieces or trying to see whose pieces could move faster. To everyone else, she was a complete idiot, but only she knew this was all part of her strategy, to intentionally lose to Stewart and use the copper badge as bait to lure him in. As she was plotting, Stewart checkmated her, ending the first game decisively. The referee teacher was amazed. As expected of Master Stewart, a checkmate with a knight and bishop, Stewart's victory was a foregone conclusion. The second game started immediately, and Sylvia pulled a move that left everyone speechless. She broke the rules by stacking her chess pieces into a giant castle. Stewart stared in disbelief and looked at the teacher. Is that against the rules? Unsurprisingly, Sylvia lost that game just as easily. She let out a long sigh and put on a pitiful act. You're so good. Can you teach me how to win? Stewart chuckled, his eyes full of disdain. Sorry, but I'd rather not bring shame upon my chess tutor. A purple-haired lackey immediately piped up to brag. Lord Stewart's tutor is the chess master, Her Highness Princess Aileen. Hearing the familiar name Aileen, Sylvia's hand holding a chess piece froze. Memories of her past life flooded her mind. Chess, it's just a game of back and forth? That wicked woman Aileen had sworn to be her little sister's shadow for life, claiming she didn't want to learn about ruling or chess. In the end, it was all lies and betrayal. Sylvia couldn't help but let out a sneer. Aileen, is she even worthy? Daring to show off stolen things so brazenly? Seeing this, Caroline's face went pale. Aya, stop. We can't afford to provoke them. What if someone accuses us of disrespecting the royal family? Sylvia snapped back to reality, realizing she had spoken her thoughts aloud. Just then, whispers about Caroline's family started up again, the words vile and cruel. The lackeys burst out laughing. A poor girl and a rich fool. What a perfect match. In that instant, Sylvia's anger ignited. In 2 lifetimes, she had grown to despise these smug, sycophantic fools. This time, she would not stay silent. She grabbed Caroline's hand, stood up, and declared with determination, "The copper badge must be mine." A blonde-haired boy stepped up to defend Stewart. Do you think this is a game of make-believe? This is the Academy's welcoming competition. Sylvia smiled faintly. If I win the 3rd game, the copper badge is mine. Lord Stewart is so skilled. Surely he wouldn't be afraid to play a 3rd game with me. The lackeys all urged Stewart to ignore the little fool. Stewart hesitated. Seeing her chance, Sylvia strode forward and used a goading tactic. So, Princess Aileen's star pupil is a coward. Stewart shot back. I just don't want to waste my time. Sylvia pressed on. I see. You're afraid that losing will bring shame to the Wellington family, right? Hearing this, Stewart's face flushed with anger. I would never lose to you. Sylvia smiled to herself. The fish had taken the bait again. The 3rd game officially began. Less than a minute in, Sylvia lost her most powerful piece. Stewart couldn't help but taunt her. Still want to bet? Sylvia gritted her teeth, her gaze firm. I'll bet. I bet you'll lose. If I win, the copper badge is mine. If I lose, every badge I earn from now on is yours. Stewart thought she was hopelessly stupid and agreed to the bet without hesitation. The teacher announced that both parties had agreed and the contract was sealed. Sylvia threw out a final, chilling line. It's too late for you to regret this. As soon as the words left her mouth, she was like a different person. She dominated the board, and with a single brilliant pawn promotion, she cornered Stewart's king. Your king is now a plaything for my new queen. Stewart was utterly shocked. You did that on purpose? You plan to promote your pawn to a queen from the very beginning, just to checkmate my king? A confident, proud smile spread across Sylvia's face. Who said pawns are the most useless pieces? How do you know it isn't a queen in disguise? With her sharp intellect, Sylvia emerged victorious in the 3rd game, successfully winning the copper badge. Stewart, who had been certain of his victory, was now red-faced with anger. Stop right there, he shouted. That was your true self just now, wasn't it? Sylvia winked playfully, a sly smile on her lips. You guess? Seeing her expression, Stewart's anger flared. He vowed to win the copper badge back. Sylvia waved a dismissive hand. I'll be waiting. Beside her, Caroline was completely in awe of Sylvia's performance. Aya, you were amazing. But Sylvia just shrugged it off. Beating a little kid was easy. A second later, however, it hit her. She was supposed to be playing the part of a weak, helpless prey to lure him in, and now she had thoroughly offended him. A wave of regret washed over her. She looked at Caroline weakly and asked, Is it too late to give the badge back to him now? Caroline shook her head helplessly. No, I've heard Lord Stewart holds a grudge. Maybe you should consider apologizing to him? Sylvia reluctantly started walking towards Stewart, who was now radiating hostility. She hesitated, unsure of what to say. This guy was willing to risk being called a bully just to compete with me. He must really want this copper badge. And I beat him in front of everyone. I'm really done for this time. Sylvia couldn't think of an excuse to appease him. Just then, a man approached from a distance, shouting, Master Stewart! Master Stewart! Someone from the capital is here. Stewart's gloomy face instantly brightened. He shot a cold glare back at Sylvia and spat out a threat. I will get you back for today's humiliation. But Sylvia's face immediately lit up with excitement. What did you say? All she could think about was the person from the capital. She wondered if it could be Stewart's thick-skinned, black-hearted old man, Duke Wellington. The day she had been waiting for was finally here, yet her feelings were a complicated mess. Unable to contain her curiosity, Sylvia secretly followed Stewart to the meeting place. But what she saw was a group of arrogant-looking stewards. The hope in Stewart's eyes instantly faded to disappointment. "Oh, it's you." He had thought it would be his father. After scanning the area, he couldn't help but ask, "Is father still not coming?" A steward responded coldly, "The Duke is a very busy man. He doesn't have time to come to a remote place like this." Sylvia's gaze fell on the lily crest on the steward's uniform, and she immediately understood. They're from Duke Wellington's wife's family. Sending his wife's stewards to deliver things to his illegitimate son, it was clear Wellington didn't value this child very much. With this new information, other ideas for revenge began to form in Sylvia's mind. Since Wellington has chosen to be an invisible father, abandoning his son to maintain a delicate balance in his family, then I'll just have to pity little Stewart and shatter that so-called balance for him. A glint of excitement shone in Sylvia's eyes. She couldn't wait to see them all tear each other apart. The mere thought of it made her laugh out loud. Suddenly, a deep voice came from behind her. "What are you doing here?" Before she could react, Sylvia felt herself being lifted up like a little chick. A pair of impressive pecs, legs that went on for miles. "Even if you have a great body, you can't just lift me up." Sylvia struggled, finally managing to lift her head to see the man's face. She froze, her world shaking as a name escaped her lips. "Leo?" Leo flinched at the name and gently set her down. "How do you know my name?" he asked, confused. Sylvia looked at him, a storm of emotion swirling inside her. How could she forget? How could she possibly forget the name of the man who, in her past life, had sworn to shed his last drop of blood and offer all his loyalty to her? She just never expected to meet him again like this. Leo was completely baffled. How could this little girl possibly know him? Sylvia quickly made up a story. "You were the top knight in the Empire. Everyone knows you." Leo let out a bitter laugh. "Now I'm just the humble security captain of Vale Academy." Sylvia was shocked. "You achieved so much for the Empire? How could they send you to this remote backwater?" Leo reached out and gently patted Sylvia's head. "That's grown-up business. Little kids shouldn't ask so many questions. If I can't protect that person, then I'd rather be far away from that filthy place." Sylvia understood immediately. "It's because of me." After her death, there was no way they would have let Leo, her most trusted subordinate, go unpunished. Even after he had led the Eagle Knights to reclaim 3 cities for the Empire, they still kicked him out to a godforsaken place like this. A wave of fury washed over Sylvia as she cursed those foolish, shameless bastards. Why did they all get to climb the ranks while she and her loyal followers either died a wrongful death or were banished? The more she thought about it, the more frustrated she became, and she couldn't help but cry out, "Why is everyone around me so miserable?" Leo was stunned. "What did you say?" Sylvia quickly realized her mistake and turned away. "No, nothing." Then while Leo was distracted, she took off running. But she didn't get far before he caught her. Leo looked at her sternly. "As a student of Vale Academy, sneaking around and eavesdropping is completely unacceptable." Sylvia's heart sank. She had a bad feeling about this. "Sure enough," Leo continued, "in my capacity as the captain of the Academy's security team, I sentence you to clean the Academy gardens." Sylvia's eyes widened in protest. "No, you can't do that." As they were arguing, Stewart pushed the door open with a bang. "Who's making all this noise?" Sylvia cringed with embarrassment. Stewart stormed over, furious. "Why are you here?" Sylvia panicked and tried to explain herself. "I was just passing by. I didn't mean to listen to your conversation." Her words only made Stewart angrier. He grabbed her wrist tightly. "What exactly did you hear?" He was terrified she had seen him acting like a pathetic, tail-wagging puppy. Sylvia was confused, not understanding why he was reacting so strongly. As they stood in a standoff, a sword suddenly came between them. Leo spoke in a cold, low voice. "Violence is forbidden within the Academy, especially against a lady. Attacking someone weaker than you is despicable." Looking at the familiar Leo, Sylvia felt a wave of relief. Stewart, on the other hand, was too intimidated to make a move and could only meekly apologize. "I'm sorry, it was my mistake." Watching this, Sylvia couldn't help but wonder, has this little brat had a change of heart? Stewart looked Sylvia up and down, his eyes filled with mockery. "Her, a lady, she's a pipsqueak who's not even 3 feet tall, with a waist like a festival wine barrel." who spends her days lost in a fantasy world. What kind of lady is that? His words were like a sharp knife stabbing straight into Sylvia's heart, and she was furious. She swore to herself that she would make this brat pay. In an instant, tears welled up in Sylvia's eyes and streamed down her face like a flood. Stewart immediately panicked, but the kid had a thick skin. Within a second, he was putting on a show again. Lord Leo, you must punish this eavesdropper. Sylvia wasn't too worried. She knew Leo all too well. With a mouth like Stewart's, Leo wouldn't let him off easy. Sure enough, Leo's face hardened as he glared at Stewart, insulting and attacking a fellow student. In my capacity as the captain of the Academy's security team, I sentence you to clean the Academy gardens. Serves you right. Sylvia couldn't help but giggle from the side, but she never imagined that the bad luck would boomerang back to her. Leo shot her a death glare. Eavesdropping is just as shameful. You'll be cleaning too. Sylvia was stunned. Stewart, on the other hand, eager to make a good impression on the former Imperial Knight, readily accepted his punishment. Sylvia saw right through his little scheme. Does this fool really think this will make Wellington think more highly of him? He's dreaming. She was so busy gloating that she almost forgot she had been punished too, until Leo's deep voice broke through her thoughts. Ma'am, it's time for you to start cleaning as well. Sylvia reached out and patted Leo's shoulder. Leo, nice one. Leo's heart skipped a beat. A long-forgotten sense of familiarity washed over him. There was once another person who would so casually and easily pat his shoulder. To him, victory wasn't about possessing wealth or titles, nor was it about being surrounded by beautiful women. It was about her eyes seeing only him, her gentle words spoken only for him. She who was so high and mighty had treated him, a man of humble birth, differently. Victory was like a secret code, the light tap of her fingers on his shoulder. He cared nothing for material things. All he craved was her eternal favor. Leo looked at the little girl before him, a wild thought crossing his mind. Could it be that Her Highness Stephanie left behind a child? But reason quickly took over, and he dismissed the absurd idea, telling Sylvia to get to her cleaning duty. Watching Sylvia's retreating figure, Leo felt his idea was even more ridiculous. He, of all people, knew for a fact that Lady Stephanie had never borne a child. Just then, Teacher Civvy called out to him. Lord Leo, what are you doing standing here? Leo told her about punishing the 2 new students. Teacher Civvy sighed. This year's new students are full of hidden talents. He then excitedly shared the details of the incredible chess match from the welcoming competition. The moment Leo saw the game record, his eyes widened in shock. This style of play, it's so much like Lady Stephanie's. He couldn't help but ask, who was the winner of this match? A child named Sylvia. Sylvia? Wasn't that the same girl who had been eavesdropping and patted his shoulder just moments ago? Even a close relative wouldn't be this similar. Another bold guess popped into Leo's head. Could Lady Stephanie have been reincarnated as Sylvia? But could something so unbelievable really happen in this world? Leo was lost in thought. He was Lady Stephanie's closest and most trusted confidant. She had once joked, even if I die one day, I'd probably find a way to take you to heaven with me. Leo had been deeply honored at the time, but now he wondered if maybe she wasn't in heaven, but had returned to the mortal world instead. Lady Stephanie, please forgive a coward's self-deceiving fantasy. Forgive me for still daring to hope that you left behind a child or some trace of yourself in this world. Lord Leo, are you all right? Teacher Civvy's concerned voice brought him back. Leo shook his head, saying he was fine. He then asked her to share any future news about Sylvia with him. Teacher Civvy, thinking Leo was also a chess enthusiast, happily agreed. Meanwhile, in the garden, Stewart was diligently cleaning. Sylvia appeared and greeted him. But after everything that had happened, Stewart hated the sight of the cute girl and simply turned his back on her, continuing to sweep. But Sylvia didn't give up. His reaction only fueled her determination. Stewart couldn't stand her hovering around him any longer and swung his broom at her. Get out of my way! I don't want to see you! To his surprise, Sylvia easily dodged the attack and landed steadily on the broomstick. Stewart's face instantly darkened. Sylvia spoke slowly. You don't need to be upset about the stewards. The only person you should be concerned with is Duke Wellington. She knew better than anyone the depths of Wellington's hypocrisy. She then promised Stewart, I can make those stewards treat you with respect, and even make Duke Wellington himself notice you. What? Stewart looked at her, his face a picture of disbelief. Stewart tried to act calm, shouting, My father has always paid attention to me, and I've already figured out what gift I'm going to give him. I don't need your help. Hearing the word gift, Sylvia's guard went up. It seems I can't underestimate this little brat. A moment later, Stewart casually tossed the broom to Sylvia. Though she fumbled a bit, she managed to catch it. She knew that for the sake of her revenge, she couldn't let Stewart easily connect with Wellington. As her mind raced, Stewart ditched her and ran off, leaving Sylvia to stare at the messy garden in stunned silence. Just then, Leo's voice came from behind her. "Miss Sylvia, is your garden cleaning finished?" Under Leo's merciless supervision, she finally finished cleaning the garden late that evening. Sylvia was so tired her whole body ached. She collapsed onto her bed, slowly recovering as Caroline gave her a massage. Sylvia muttered under her breath, "Your technique is no match for Leo's," but Caroline was worried she wouldn't be able to handle her classes the next day. Sylvia, however, didn't care. She could pass these childish classes with her eyes closed. Still, she casually asked, "What classes are there tomorrow?" Caroline diligently counted on her fingers. "There's poetry, horse riding, painting." When Caroline mentioned painting, her eyes lit up. "That's one of Vale Academy's most famous courses. You can even win a copper badge at the annual art exhibition. Duke Wellington himself first gained recognition at that very exhibition years ago." Caroline's words jogged Sylvia's memory. It was at that Vale Academy art exhibition all those years ago that Wellington's painting, Autumn Harvest, had caught the finance minister's eye. When the minister asked about its meaning, Wellington had explained, "The man in the painting is my grandfather. He worked tirelessly, but his entire year's harvest had to be paid in taxes. Autumn is a time of bounty, but for farmers it is also a time of sorrow." The finance minister, impressed by his insight and talent, took the painting back to the capital and petitioned the emperor to lower the agricultural tax. Wellington became famous overnight and was admitted to the Imperial Capital Academy. Sylvia immediately thought of Stewart and guessed he would try to copy his father's success. Meanwhile, in the boys' dormitory, Stewart was staring thoughtfully at his paints. Ever since he was born, his mother had told him stories about his father, placing high hopes on him to become as great as his father. Over time, Stewart's mindset became twisted. He believed that by achieving honor in the same way his father had, he could convince himself that he truly shared his father's blood, that he was truly his son. The painting class began. As the art teacher droned on, Sylvia had no interest in listening. Her head swiveled back and forth, her eyes scanning the room. Suddenly, her eyes lit up as she locked onto her target, Stewart. He was completely focused on his painting. While the teacher wasn't looking, Sylvia tiptoed silently behind him. She peered at his canvas, and, just as she expected, there was a secret hidden beneath the surface. "What are you painting?" Sylvia yelled, yanking off the top canvas with a swift motion. "What are you doing?" Stewart exploded with rage. A portrait of Duke Wellington was revealed, with a line of text below it. "To my father, James Wellington." Sylvia sneered. "You really are trying to imitate Wellington to get famous at the art exhibition, and you are going to give the painting to him." Exposed, Stewart's face turned bright red. He jumped up to block the painting. "It's none of your business." The teacher heard the commotion and turned to scold her. "Miss Sylvia, you will not speak ill of Duke Wellington." But Sylvia wouldn't back down. She clutched the canvas and dodged around the classroom. "Stop dreaming, Stewart. Wellington doesn't even like painting, and he's not the kind of poet who gets lost in memories. He's just a man full of schemes and conspiracies." Her words shocked the entire class. Stewart lunged forward to snatch the painting back, roaring, "What do you know?" Stewart hated Sylvia. He hated how she repeatedly trampled on what little dignity he had left. But this time he said nothing more. He just silently turned and left the classroom. Sylvia had done it on purpose. She knew that only a harsh dose of reality would make Stewart see the truth. Seeing their leader so humiliated, Stewart's lackeys were seeing red. They were determined to get revenge. That evening, they waited until Sylvia was alone, then lied and said a teacher was looking for her, forcefully leading her away. Sylvia knew exactly what they were up to and decided to play along. Soon, they led her to a dark, empty classroom on the 4th floor. The moment they reached the door, their expressions turned vicious. Sylvia felt a sudden, powerful push from behind, and before she could react, she was shoved hard into the room. A loud bang followed as the door was slammed shut. Seeing this, Sylvia immediately burst into tears. "What are you doing? Let me out." Outside the door, the lackeys jeered. "You think you're so tough, huh? Daring to go against Lord Stewart? Scared now, are we?" Sylvia had intended to play the victim, letting the teacher, Mr. Jerome, find her in a miserable state, so she could use it as leverage to make Stewart agree to her terms. But she hadn't expected these two to be so dim-witted. Locking her in a dark room was such a childish trick. It looked like she would have to create a few wounds herself to stage a more tragic scene. Meanwhile, thanks to Sylvia's clever arrangements, Caroline was frantically searching for Mr. Jerome. In her panic, she wasn't looking where she was going and ran straight into a wall of muscle. Caroline's face went pale, and she instinctively bowed in apology. "I'm so sorry, Lord Leo." Leo looked down at the flustered little girl and asked calmly, "What's the rush?" Tears streamed down Caroline's face. "My roommate Sylvia is missing." Hearing this, Leo's mind instantly flashed to the little girl who so resembled the princess. His expression tensed. "What happened?" Caroline sobbed as she explained everything. "A few days ago, Sylvia specifically told me that someone at the academy was trying to harm her. She said if she didn't come back to the dorm on time after class, I should go find Mr. Jerome immediately. It's been 5 hours since she should have been back." As the captain of the academy's security team, Leo was responsible for any missing student. He immediately mobilized the guards to conduct a full-scale search. Night fell, and Leo searched tirelessly, finally tracking the trail to the classroom on the 4th floor. His heart pounded with anxiety. Without a second thought, he kicked the door open and shouted, "Sylvia!" But only a heavy silence answered him. In that moment, a powerful sense of dread washed over Leo. Could she already be gone, just like the princess? A wave of guilt consumed him. If I hadn't been sent away by those people, if I had been more perceptive and noticed their plot, if I had returned to the city sooner, the more he thought, the colder he felt. Was he truly destined to fail everyone he tried to protect? Just then he heard a soft click from behind him. Leo spun around, and there, a noise from the classroom across the hall. He bolted over and pounded on the door. "Sylvia, is that you? Are you in there?" Behind the door, Sylvia was completely bewildered by the voice. "What's going on? It was supposed to be Mr. Jerome. Why is it Leo?" She knew Leo was too smart to fool, so she had no choice but to quickly wipe the dirt off her face. "Step back," Leo's voice called out again. Before Sylvia could react, he drew his sword with a swoosh, and with a powerful swing sliced the classroom door to pieces. A stunned Sylvia stared in disbelief. It was a good thing she had moved back quickly, or she would have been in serious trouble. Seeing that Sylvia was unharmed, Leo rushed to her side and knelt down. "I finally saved the person I wanted to save." Hearing this, Sylvia's mind filled with questions. The person you wanted to save? In his excitement, Leo grabbed Sylvia's hand, squeezing a little too hard. The pain made her instinctively pull her hand away. As she did, something flew out of her sleeve. With lightning speed, Leo had already picked it up. Sylvia froze. It was a small crossbow. Leo fiddled with it for a moment, then drew the string. With a whoosh, an arrow shot out and embedded itself deep in the ceiling, leaving a large crater. She never expected the small sleeve-mounted crossbow to be so powerful. Now, even with 10 mouths, Sylvia couldn't explain her way out of this one. She could only try to bluff her way through. "If I said this was just a child's toy, would you believe me?" Of course, Leo didn't. He called her bluff immediately. "The penetrating power of this crossbow is enough to break a school door lock. This isn't something a child your age should have. Even the noble children in the capital would kill for one, yet you had one prepared. You could have left at any time, so why didn't you? Was this crossbow not for opening the lock, but for getting revenge on those who bullied you?" Leo's deduction was too fast. Sylvia was speechless. But she still tried to argue. "This is just a new toy my dad brought back from the Greece Empire for my brother. I just secretly took it to scare them. I wasn't going to use it. I don't even really know how." Seeing Leo's expression soften slightly, Sylvia boldly patted his shoulder. "I don't use a powerful weapon like this to open a lock. That's like you wasting your talent as a security guard here. If I were your master, my heart would break for you. Talent is the one thing that should never be wasted." Hearing her words, Leo's mind reeled. For a moment, he saw Princess Stephanie standing right in front of him. "Is it you, Your Highness?" Leo whispered, pulling Sylvia into a tight hug. For a fleeting moment, Sylvia allowed herself to sink into the long mist embrace. But she quickly came to her senses and pushed Leo away forcefully. "What did you call me?" She knew Leo's personality all too well. If she admitted she was Stephanie, the news would spread like wildfire, and her entire revenge plan would be ruined. So she immediately put on an innocent face. "What, Highness? Sylvia is just a little kid." Leo snapped back to reality, feeling foolish. "That's right, she's just a child." He held out his hand to Sylvia. "Come on, I'll take you back." Sylvia hesitated for a moment before taking his familiar warm hand, her heart a mess of conflicting emotions. She knew it wasn't time to reveal her identity to Leo. The next day, news of Sylvia being trapped spread throughout the academy, and everyone suspected Stewart was behind it. Just then, Sylvia pushed open the classroom door and walked in. The noisy room instantly fell silent. Sylvia sat down and started painting as if nothing had happened. The lackeys, however, started bragging smugly. "See? We knew that rich girl wouldn't dare go up against a noble." The words had barely left his mouth when Sylvia, without a second's hesitation, grabbed a bucket of dirty water and, with a splash, drenched the blonde-haired boy from head to toe. He was completely stunned. "What are you doing?" Sylvia smiled politely. "A small gift in return." The boy was furious, but Sylvia wasn't finished. She picked up another bucket of dirty water and strode toward the purple-haired boy. "Let me show you whether a rich girl dares to go up against a noble." The purple-haired boy screamed and ran. Sylvia chased after him. "You were so brave when you locked me in that empty classroom, weren't you?" Then, seeing her chance, Sylvia threw the water. But the boy dodged behind an easel, and the entire bucket of water, without missing a drop, splashed all over Stewart's painting. Everyone was stunned. Sylvia panicked. "What do I do? What do I do? Is it too late to fix it?" But it was too late. Stewart walked into the classroom, his face a dark mask, and said coldly, "It's you again." Sylvia swallowed nervously. Just as she thought Stewart was about to attack her, he simply waved his hand and, with a ripping sound, tore the canvas from its frame. "I know they started it, so I'll let it go this time. But from now on, stay away from me. Get out of my sight." With that, he turned, his small back trembling slightly. A pang of guilt shot through Sylvia's heart, and she instinctively reached out and grabbed his arm. The moment Stewart turned back, Sylvia's eyes filled with panic. She never would have guessed that the usually arrogant and domineering Stewart would actually be on the verge of tears, and that she, a small, seemingly weak girl, was the cause. Helpless, Sylvia tried to comfort the distraught boy. "Your painting, even if it's dirty, it could still win first prize." But her words had no effect. Stewart didn't care about that. His only goal was to present the painting to his father. An idea struck Sylvia. She leaned in close to Stewart's ear. "You could ask the steward to help you take the painting to your father." Stewart just looked at her with disgust, as if her suggestion was completely absurd. When that didn't work, Sylvia decided to try goading him. A provocative smile touched her lips. "Want to make a bet with me? Although, after what happened at the welcoming competition, I'm guessing you don't have the guts." Her words ignited the fire in Stewart's chest. "A bet? You're on. Who's afraid of who?" Without a second thought, Stewart fell headfirst into Sylvia's carefully laid trap. A flicker of triumph, almost imperceptible, shone in Sylvia's eyes. "Don't worry," she said. "I'm definitely going to win." A few days later, the highly anticipated art competition took place. Just as Sylvia had predicted, Stewart won first place without any trouble. The guests were all amazed by his artwork. However, the stewards from the board were a stark contrast. Even though the art teacher lavished praise on Stewart's talent, the head steward treated it as empty boasting, coldly stating, "We will convey his achievements to the Duke," before arrogantly turning away. It seemed the stewards were there for a much bigger prize this time. Benson, the head steward, berated his subordinates for their incompetence. "All these nobles and wealthy merchants, and you couldn't close a single deal." Sylvia watched all of this from a corner, not surprised in the slightest. She had known all along what the stewards were really there for, and this, she realized, was a golden opportunity for both her and that boy Stewart. Stewart mustered up his courage and approached Benson, asking him to take the painting back to his father. Benson looked at the artwork with a blank expression, seeming to hesitate. Stewart's heart leaped into his throat, thinking it was a lost cause. But then, to his surprise, Benson suddenly nodded. "Young master, we will convey your sentiments to Lord Wellington." But Stewart didn't feel happy at all. He could clearly see the dismissive and contemptuous look in the steward's eyes. They didn't care about his words, and they had never taken him seriously. In that moment, he was forced to face a cruel reality. In his father's eyes, he was insignificant. Seeing his disappointment, Sylvia walked over and delivered the final blow. "Your father only gives his attention to people who are useful, and right now, to him, you are—" Before Sylvia could finish, Stewart finished her sentence with a bitter laugh. "Right now, I'm just a useless piece of trash, aren't I?" Sylvia nodded slightly. "It's good that you realize that. But don't lose hope, I can make you valuable." Stewart cautiously asked Sylvia about her plan, but she just smiled without saying a word. For a moment, Stewart regretted ever listening to a supposed fool. But then he remembered everything she had done so far, and coupled with the high chance of his father ignoring him, he gritted his teeth and agreed to cooperate. Seeing him agree, Sylvia immediately stated her condition. Once the plan succeeded, Stewart had to take her to the imperial capital. Stewart was taken aback. He had expected her to ask for something extravagant, not just a trip to see the capital. He had no idea this was the first step in Sylvia's grand revenge scheme. She was using him to get close to the very people who had wronged her in her past life. Without much thought, Stewart readily agreed and pressed her for the details of the plan. But Sylvia's eyes just lit up with excitement. First, let's throw a party to celebrate. Stewart almost exploded with anger. A few days later, Stewart's family hosted a charity auction under the guise of raising money for an orphanage. The turnout was sparse, and the items up for auction were painfully ordinary. Seeing the disgusted looks on the stewards' faces, Stewart finally lost his temper with Sylvia. "You think this junk is going to make my father see me differently? My father has handled the king's crown and the queen's necklace. He's aided countless refugees. You think he'll be impressed by a gold-plated pocket watch? An auction?" Stewart was getting anxious, but Sylvia remained calm. He stood up to end the farce, but she pulled him back down. Sylvia wiped her mouth and spoke slowly. "This is just the first step. The item I have prepared is more valuable than the king's crown." She was certain her treasure would fetch a high price. Stewart saw the determination and confidence in her eyes, but he didn't believe a reputation for charity would win his father's favor. Sylvia gracefully stood up, leaving him with a cryptic remark. "Politics is like an iceberg. The real part is always hidden underwater." Stewart was completely baffled. Just then, Sylvia toddled onto the auction stage and called out, "Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please." The guests all turned to stare, their faces full of doubt, wondering why Stewart was mixed up with this little fool. Sylvia had just ripped away Stewart's last shred of dignity. He had never felt so humiliated. The priceless auction item Sylvia had boasted about was none other than his own ruined painting. Laughter rippled through the room. Stewart thought it would be a miracle if the painting sold for even $200,000. Just as everyone was waiting for the punchline, a meaningful smile spread across Sylvia's face. "The starting bid is $10 million. Benson's eyes widened in shock. He thought the child had lost her mind. Stewart was equally stunned. This was a new level of humiliation. He would probably never be able to show his face in Vale City again. Just then, Sylvia glanced at him, her eyes seeming to say, "Watch closely. The part underwater." Before Stewart could process it, Sylvia began her performance. "Lord Stewart told me that Duke Wellington once told him a fairy tale." At this, the crowd suddenly took an interest in the little fool. Sylvia continued her fabricated story. "Once upon a time, a king decided to test his ministers. He presented them with countless treasures of gold and silver, dazzling jewels, timeless works of art, and one battered helmet, letting them choose as they pleased. All the others chose the treasures, but one young guard chose the helmet. The king, curious, asked him why. The young guard replied that the helmet was more precious than any rare jewel, because it was what His Majesty wore when he was still an overlooked prince. The king, feeling he had finally found a kindred spirit, chose that young guard as his heir, granting him endless wealth and power. This is the story that Duke Wellington's most humble son told me, but I'm too slow to understand what it means. Could it be that Lord Wellington holds a great treasure and is searching for the one who understands him? But who could that person be? A masterpiece of his own flesh and blood? The arrival of his new wife's stewards?" Sylvia laid it all out on the table. "This is Duke Wellington's gesture of sincerity." Before the words had even faded, the entire room erupted. Nobles frantically raised their paddles. And in the end, the painting was sold to two nobles for a combined price of $60 million. Benson's jaw hit the floor. $60 million was equivalent to 60 years of tax revenue for Vale City. Politics, it turned out, was a game Sylvia played with masterful skill. The part of the iceberg beneath the water had never changed. The ambition of lower nobles to climb higher, pursuit of power by wealthy merchants, the naked desire for financial support from politicians, and the hypocritical obsession with so-called decency. This was the source of Sylvia's confidence, the reason she dared to play them all with a single ruined painting. Stewart, however, was completely baffled. Why did everyone suddenly start throwing money around after hearing that story? The moment the $60 million landed in Duke Wellington's coffers, he began to wonder, how could his own dirt-poor backwater hometown possibly produce so much wealth? His subordinate reported that it was all the work of Stewart and a girl named Sylvia. Wellington was instantly intrigued by Sylvia. Meanwhile, Sylvia was sighing, trying to figure out what to do with the 60 million, when Stewart sidled up next to her and started sighing dramatically as well. Sylvia jumped. "Why are you copying me?" Stewart shot back. "Who's copying you?" "I'm thinking too." Sylvia was curious what his little brain could possibly be pondering. It turned out he couldn't understand why those people were willing to pay so much for his painting. Sylvia almost burst out laughing but took pity on the little fool. Since the dawn of time, politics and money have been inseparable friends. Whether you're a bureaucrat or a noble, if you want to make a splash on the political stage, you need financial backing. Stewart blurted out, "Isn't that just bribery?" Sylvia quickly clamped a hand over his mouth. "You can't say that. The adults call it political contributions." The real reason Duke Wellington sent those stewards to Vale City was to collect those contributions. Princess Stephanie was the one who came up with that tactic years ago. If you're going to bleed someone dry, you might as well start with the local gentry and wealthy merchants. It's just not something you can do out in the open. Stewart understood instantly. "So you use the painting as an excuse for them to get the money to my father?" Sylvia raised an eyebrow and nodded. "That's the kind of decency the upper class demands." Stewart's face fell. No wonder his father didn't care for him. Just like his mother, he couldn't provide the kind of decency his father needed. At that, Stewart, for the first time, opened up about his mother. "Everyone thinks she was some great socialite, but she was just a very, very good mother. When my mother fell in love with my father, he was just a poor boy from a remote town. He promised he would come back and marry her once he made a name for himself. But who would have thought that after a few years, he would become a rising political star and turn around and marry the daughter of a major noble family in the capital? My mother, like me, couldn't see the financial dealings hidden beneath the surface of politics. Couldn't see the greed and shamelessness disguised as decency. She thought a duke from a common background would always have the heart of a commoner. But he just played her, stringing her along while he was with his wife in the capital. After being deceived by his sweet words time and time again, my mother finally despaired and took her own life." Remembering the scene of his mother slitting her own throat, Stewart couldn't stop the tears from flowing. The most ridiculous part was that the person responsible for it all was the very father he was so desperately trying to please. Seeing his distress, Sylvia tried to comfort him. "It's all just a transaction of interests. Those are the rules of the powerful." Of course, Stewart understood this, but he still longed for a family. He looked at Sylvia with envy. "You have parents who love each other and a brother who adores you. Look at me. The only person who ever loved me, my mother, is gone. All I have is a stepmother who wants me dead, a brother and sister who despise me, and a father who never shows his face." Hearing him, Sylvia suddenly felt that despite being a difficult kid, he was actually quite pitiful. "Do you hate Wellington?" she asked tentatively. Stewart remained silent. Sylvia guessed the answer. "You crave Wellington's approval, but you also resent him, don't you?" All of Stewart's suppressed emotions erupted. "Yes, he played my mother. He deceived her. If it weren't for him, my mother wouldn't have died. You probably think it's ridiculous. A country boy who doesn't even know what political contributions are, who owes his entire status to him, and yet I resent him. I swore long ago that I would become more powerful than him and make him kneel at my mother's grave and apologize." Stewart wiped away his tears and stuck out his chin. "If you want to go tell on me, go ahead." To his surprise, Sylvia just gently patted his shoulder and praised his ambition. Then she took his hand. "In this world, all relationships are transactions of interests. As long as you can be useful to me, I'll help you poison a god if I have to." Stewart suddenly asked, "What kind of interest do you want from me?" Sylvia was at a loss for words. She couldn't exactly say it was for revenge. As she racked her brain for a lie, Stewart's ears turned bright red, and he yanked his hand away. "I think I know, but you're not my type." With that, he turned and fled, leaving Sylvia standing there, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Sylvia felt like she was suffocating in the complex and exquisite gown. The reason she was subjecting herself to this torture all started 3 days ago. Stewart had suddenly given her a beautiful dress. As Sylvia was puzzling over it, Stewart had arrogantly invited her to his birthday party. "It's my birthday in 3 days. My father is having people throw a party for me, and he's even arranged for me to take on a mentor." Sylvia had just nodded dismissively. Okay, I get it." A moment later, it registered. "A mentor? What kind of mentor?" Stewart boasted proudly. "My father has invited the famous court painter Assel to be my private tutor." Assel? Hearing the familiar name, Sylvia immediately agreed to attend the party. With one small request, she begged him to let her meet the great master Assel. Stewart couldn't understand why Sylvia, whose painting style was more beast than art, would suddenly be interested in painting. But he couldn't resist her pleading and finally agreed. When Sylvia put on the delicate dress, Stewart's eyes nearly popped out of his head. This little fool. She looks almost cute in the clothes I picked out for her. Before he could compose himself, Sylvia grabbed his hand and pulled him toward the ballroom. She couldn't wait to see Assel. As someone who had spent years in the palace, he might be the key to unlocking the truth. Long ago, Assel had agreed to paint a portrait of Stephanie for her coronation, but the painting was never finished. Because on the night before the ceremony, she was murdered by those people. That night, she had sent Assel to the coronation hall to scout the location. Perhaps he had seen something. Sylvia thought that if she could keep Assel by her side, her revenge would be much more certain. Beside her, Stewart was starting to feel inexplicably annoyed. He could clearly sense that Sylvia's interest was not in him. A moment later, Benson announced, "The birthday party for Master Stewart will now begin. Though Duke Wellington could not be here in person, he has prepared a gift for his son." He gestured for a subordinate to bring the gift forward. "These are pigments specially commissioned by the Duke for you. The blue, in particular, is ground from precious sapphires." Stewart's hands trembled as he accepted the bottle of blue pigment. A wave of sadness washed over him. Of course. His father didn't even know he was allergic to sapphires. Just then, Sylvia noticed his distress and deliberately made a noise to remind him, "It's just a transaction of interests. Don't get too caught up in the act." With Sylvia's reminder, Stewart instantly came to his senses. "That's right, this is just a transaction. My value may be small now, but in the future, I will surely bring him even greater benefits." In front of everyone, Stewart made a solemn promise. "From this day forward, I will work even harder to live up to the faith my father has placed in me." His words were met with a round of applause. Even Benson, who had always looked down on him, now saw him in a new light. Like a child seeking praise, Stewart looked over at Sylvia. Just as she was about to give him an approving smile, the red-haired girl passed by and deliberately bumped into her. Sylvia stumbled and fell onto the carpet. The red-haired girl had already rushed up to Stewart, her mouth a running stream of compliments. "Are you okay?" Stewart asked, taking a nervous step forward. Sylvia met his gaze and with a single look reminded him not to be rash. Stewart immediately understood and reverted to his elegant, composed, noble demeanor. "Are you all right?" Sylvia smiled and said she was fine. Seeing how close the two were, the red-haired girl's eyes turned green with envy. She tried to slander Sylvia in front of Stewart. But before she could get a word out, Stewart ordered her to be quiet. Just then, Benson's voice cut through the noise. "Esteemed guests, if I may have your attention, let us welcome the former court painter Baron Assel Bronk." The moment the exceptionally charismatic Assel appeared, the room erupted with excitement. Sylvia could hardly contain her own excitement. "Assel, it's really Assel. But right now, those eyes of yours, blessed by the gods, probably don't recognize me. But that's okay. In this life, let's get to know each other all over again. Everyone, it's a pleasure to meet you. I am Assel." Assel slowly approached Stewart. "In the future, I will be your private tutor." With that, he took the necklace from around his neck and offered it to Stewart as a greeting gift. Stewart was taken aback. "This is too valuable." The red-haired girl looked on, happy for Stewart, completely oblivious to the necklace's true meaning. "This was a gift from Her Highness, Princess Stephanie, when I first became a court painter. I hope you will cherish it." Stephanie was a taboo subject. The room immediately broke into a flurry of whispers. "This Assel is clearly trying to humiliate Lord Stewart." To everyone's surprise, Stewart accepted the gift with a smile. On one hand, it was for Sylvia. She idolized Princess Stephanie and would surely want to see it. On the other hand, his father wouldn't care what he did anyway. Stewart thanked Assel, saying he liked it very much. Assel was surprised that he wasn't angry at all. After all, giving him something from his father's mortal enemy at an event like this. It was just a shame that the son of that man was unworthy of possessing anything of Lady Stephanie's. Meanwhile, Sylvia, watching from the side, seemed to understand everything. Assel's seemingly casual gift was a clear test of the Wellington family's attitude toward Stephanie. Sylvia had reason to believe that he had taken this tutoring position to investigate the connection between Wellington and Stephanie's death. Just then, a beautiful melody began to play, and the red-haired girl boldly asked Stewart for the first dance. But Stewart refused without hesitation. "I'm sorry, I have something to do." His eyes scanned the ballroom. "Are you going to keep Master Assel company?" The red-haired girl stomped her foot in frustration. I just have to play matchmaker for a certain troublemaker, he said. She glancing at Sylvia, who was hiding behind a pillar, her eyes fixed on Assel. She seethed with hatred, unable to understand why Stewart would introduce Sylvia to Assel. Jealousy gnawed at her heart like a snake. She suddenly called out to Stewart, "According to the customs of the capital, one should offer a respected elder a drink of pure rose water as a sign of respect. As it happens, I brought some pure rose water with me from the capital." The red-haired girl wanted to use the rose water to drive a wedge between Sylvia and Stewart. She took out a small bottle of scented powder. Besides its fragrance, this powder had one major side effect. It was a powerful laxative. The ladies of the capital all used it to maintain their figures. If Assel drank this rose water, he would definitely get sick, and then Sylvia would have no chance of getting close to Lord Stewart. The red-haired girl handed the heavily dosed rose water to Stewart. He took the kind gesture without a second thought, completely unaware of the malicious intent behind it. Meanwhile, Sylvia, her heart fluttering with a mix of nervousness and anticipation, was carefully approaching Assel when a small hand stopped her. Stewart had decided to personally introduce her. Sylvia looked at him confused as he handed her a glass. "You're very interested in that Assel, aren't you? I'll take you to offer him the pure rose water." With that, they walked up to Assel. "Teacher, this is my free—" Stewart suddenly faltered, a flicker of hesitation on his face, as if he didn't know how to introduce Sylvia. After a brief pause, he gritted his teeth and yelled, "My classmate! She admires you very much and would like to offer you a drink." His voice was so loud it nearly deafened Sylvia. "What is wrong with this kid?" Sylvia composed herself and said sweetly, "Good evening, Master Assel. I absolutely love your painting, The Hiding Girl." Assel was taken aback, a look of surprise in his eyes. He never thought a 5-year-old kid would know about his early work. But Sylvia knew much more than that. She knew that the model for that painting was Stephanie herself. Years ago, Stephanie had been taking a short, lazy break when Assel had captured the moment on canvas. At the mention of this work, which held a special place in his heart, Assel's slightly stern expression visibly softened. Just then, from a corner of the room, the red-haired girl watched them with a furtive expression. Sylvia keenly sensed the strange gaze, and a feeling of unease washed over her. What is she looking at? Is it Stewart? But Stewart seemed oblivious, focused only on recommending Sylvia to Assel. "Master Assel, please taste this pure rose water. It was brought from the Rose Manor in the capital by the niece of Lady Camilla." Hearing this, Assel graciously reached out to take the cup from Sylvia. But Sylvia instinctively hesitated, her small hand tightening around the cup. Assel, seeing her hesitation, asked gently, "Is there a problem, little one?" Sylvia immediately snatched her hand back. Stewart was completely bewildered by her behavior, but Sylvia was sharp. Seeing the sneaky look on Margot's face, she instantly knew there was something wrong with the rose water. Margot was notoriously stingy. Why would she generously give up something so valuable to help Sylvia impress someone else? To expose Margot's scheme, Sylvia decided to make her taste the drink first. Quick as a flash, she rushed over to Margot and pulled her out from her hiding spot. "Margot, I hear there's a special way to appreciate drinks from the capital." Forced to take the cup, Margot's face turned grim. Sylvia asked with an innocent expression, "Why aren't you drinking? Is there something wrong with the rose water?" With hundreds of eyes on her, Margot grew flustered and tried to cover. "No, nothing's wrong. What could be wrong?" With that, she forced herself to down the rose water in one gulp and shoved the empty cup at Sylvia. "Are you satisfied now?" Sylvia blinked her big eyes. "Satisfied with what? You haven't told me how to properly appreciate it yet." Just then, Margot's stomach sent an urgent signal. She gritted her teeth against the pain and shouted, "I don't want to talk to you!" Knowing she was about to make a fool of herself, Margot shot back, "I'll deal with you later," and bolted. Stewart leaned in and whispered to Sylvia, asking what was going on, but she just told him she'd explain later. The most important thing now was to talk to Assel alone. After all, they hadn't seen each other in 6 years, and she needed to test his loyalties. Hearing this, Stewart's jealousy flared. "What is there that I can't hear?" Assel stepped in to smooth things over. A true gentleman should always grant a beautiful lady's small request. Stewart reluctantly watched them leave, worried that Sylvia was being tricked. A short while later, Sylvia and Assel were in a garden pavilion. Assel spoke first. "My dear little lady, what did you want to talk to me about?" Sylvia's face was serious. "There's something wrong with your eyes, isn't there, Master Assel?" Assel was shocked that she had seen through him, but he tried to play it cool. "Why would you say that?" Sylvia cut him off. I've heard that you are famous for your masterful use of color, that even if there was a hint of soft pink mixed into the red of rosewater, you would be able to spot it. Assel grew even more puzzled. How could a merchant's daughter know the secrets of the nobility? Sylvia continued. Margot wouldn't bring poison to a banquet. The only thing she could have used is scented powder. Scented powder has a color. Why didn't Assel, the court painter with eyes blessed by the gods, notice that something was wrong with the rosewater? You wouldn't be so careless just because we're country children, would you? The moment Assel saw Sylvia, a forgotten memory was awakened, and the long-buried truth began to surface. Sylvia's eyes glinted as she probed further. Your eyes have a problem, yet you can still be Stewart's tutor. Does this mean you have a close relationship with Duke Wellington? Assel's heart pounded. He never expected this little girl to be so clever. He couldn't bear to drag a child into the filthy world of politics, so he changed the subject. I haven't seen a girl so smart and so aggressive in a long time. With that, Assel instinctively reached out to pat Sylvia's clever head. But just as his fingertips were about to touch her hair, his hand froze and he slowly pulled it back. Sylvia's sharp intelligence, her vibrant life force, and her unstoppable aggressive spirit all reminded Assel of Princess Stephanie. A wave of guilt washed over him. If he had managed to warn the princess in time, perhaps she wouldn't have died so tragically, and he wouldn't have ended up in his current state. On the eve of the coronation, Assel had accidentally witnessed a heated argument between Aileen and Adonis. They had a serious disagreement over their plan to steal everything from Stephanie, and it was clear Aileen had lost her patience with Adonis's half-hearted efforts. Adonis tried to placate her. I'm not being half-hearted. You know Stephanie's temper. If we tell her about that, she'll never forgive us. Aileen sneered. You still don't get it, do you? In my dear sister's eyes, you're not even as important as her boorish knight Leo. You're nothing more than a pretty face. Furious, Adonis shoved Aileen to the ground. Aileen glared at him, her eyes full of venom. You may be afraid of her, but I'm not. I have a trump card to deal with her. Just then, she sensed movement nearby and whipped her head around, catching a glimpse of a figure fleeing in panic. Was that the painter? She seethed. Assel had risked everything to warn Stephanie, but he was too late. From that day on, Aileen grew suspicious of him, leading to a series of accidents. He barely managed to survive, only to attract the probing attention of Wellington. Are you still thinking about Stephanie? To escape the palace and put Wellington and Aileen at ease, Assel had no choice but to poison his own eyes. Now, he could see, but only in blurry outlines. The complex world of color was lost to him forever. Assel had planned to take these memories to his grave, but there was something about Sylvia, a strange familiarity, that brought it all rushing back. The world of adults is complicated. Little children should just be good and listen, Assel said, patting her on the head. But Sylvia just shot back. Don't try to fool me. Assel gave a wry smile. In any case, children should stay out of adult affairs. With that, Assel slowly knelt, gently took Sylvia's small chubby hand, and pressed a kiss to the back of it. My little princess, if you ever need anything in the future, you can always come to me. Sylvia's heart was a storm of emotions. Just then, Leo, who was passing by, saw the scene. His eyes narrowed, and his mind immediately leaped to one person, Princess Stephanie. Leo was stunned. Assel, Princess Stephanie's most loyal follower, was now treating a little girl with such reverence. After thinking it over, the only logical explanation he could come up with was that Assel also thought Sylvia resembled the princess. Leo was planning to find a time to talk to Assel when Evelyn came running up, out of breath. She had been sent by Margot to tattle to Leo, but the moment she saw Leo's stern face, she became a nervous wreck. Master Assel, Sylvia tried to harm Lord Leo. She put something in the drink. Leo was completely confused. Evelyn frantically tried to explain. I saw Sylvia put something in Master Assel's drink. She was trying to poison him. Leo thought back to the friendly conversation he had just witnessed between the two. It didn't look like Sylvia was trying to harm Assel at all. Leo trusted Sylvia, but he felt he had to intervene if children's quarrels were turning dangerous. So Leo calmly tested Evelyn. What kind of poison? Where did she put it, and when did you see this? Evelyn was stumped. After a long pause, she started to fabricate a story. It was the pure rose water that Lady Margot brought from the capital. Sylvia put the poison in on the balcony. I saw it when I went out for some air. The more Leo listened, the less sense Evelyn's story made. How did Margot's things end up in Sylvia's hands? And poisoning someone on a balcony is hardly a secure location. Just then, he heard hurried footsteps behind him. Margot came rushing over and ran headfirst into Leo's backside. She immediately started yelling, "Who's not looking where they're going?" When she looked up and saw it was Leo, she panicked. Seeing Evelyn's proud expression, she panicked even more, having almost forgotten she had sent Evelyn to tattle in the first place. Now that Assel hadn't drunk the drink, and the clueless Evelyn had still gone to report it, Margot gritted her teeth and decided to pin all the blame on Sylvia. "Lord Leo, I drank Sylvia's drink and now my stomach hurts terribly." Leo didn't believe a word of it. He glared at her and demanded, "Was it Sylvia who put something in the drink or was it you?" Margot quickly denied it. "It wasn't me." Leo tightened his grip on his sword, his eyes sharp enough to see through any lie. "Margot, are you sure you want to lie to me?" Margot fell silent. Leo was now certain she was the mastermind and Evelyn was her accomplice. When Evelyn heard Leo was going to report them to the school, she immediately turned on Margot, confessing everything. It was Margot's idea to drug Sylvia to embarrass her. Furious, Margot lunged at Evelyn to tear her apart. But in a flash, Leo grabbed both of them, lifting them up like little chicks, harming a fellow student at such a young age. "You will both publicly apologize to Sylvia, and then you will report to me every day to reflect on your actions and copy the school rules for 1 hour." Margot was not happy about it, but one death glare from Leo and she quickly agreed, silently vowing to get her revenge one day. Just then her stomach made an unfortunate noise. "Oh no, am I going to have an accident?" She begged Leo to let her go, but he was determined to make her apologize first. Margot's face turned bright red and she was on the verge of tears. "If you just let me go to the bathroom, I promise I'll apologize." After that incident, Margot's carefully crafted image as a proper young lady was completely shattered. For the past month, Sylvia had been following Assel around like a shadow, learning to paint. Stewart, however, thought she was just trying to get closer to him. Sylvia was speechless. "Master Assel is also happy to teach me privately," she said. Stewart suddenly looked flustered. He grabbed her wrist and mumbled, his face red. "We can see each other at other times, too." Sylvia just went on about her own artistic talent. Stewart privately wondered if she had a misunderstanding of the word talent. Sylvia, however, believed that her bold colors and passionate strokes perfectly captured the flames of her revenge. Stewart, won over by her fiery expression, reluctantly gave in. But then he thought again and came to a new conclusion. Sylvia had a crush on Master Assel. Sylvia just brushed it off with a random excuse. In reality, she was just trying to get information out of Assel, but he was tight-lipped, and she had learned nothing. Just then, a steward came with a message. "Someone from the capital is here to see Baron Assel. Class will be postponed." Stewart wondered who it could be. The steward said it was a friend of Assel's from the Royal Art Academy. Stewart suggested they go get something to eat. But when he turned around, Sylvia was gone. At that moment, Sylvia was rushing toward the reception hall, hoping to find a clue about her murder. "I have to understand the motive behind it all, to see the desires and calculations hidden beneath the surface, and to find out who was standing in the shadows, watching it all happen." Memories flooded back. Her sister Aileen had been her little shadow since they were children. She had treated her like the most delicate rose, carefully protecting her. Her fiancé Adonis was known as the perfect nobleman, elegant, righteous, and so talented he would have offered her his own beating heart. And her nephew Ilya, who had been orphaned at a young age, she had treated as her own son, guiding him and teaching him with care. Her colleague Wellington she had confided in, sharing everything with him. So why did they all betray her? The thought brought a sharp pain to Sylvia's heart, a mix of grief and hatred. Filled with both rage and hope, she carefully pushed open the door. Inside, Assel was sitting across from his former teacher, Lear. Lear's face was grim as he stared at Assel, demanding to know what had really happened on the eve of the coronation. Sylvia was thrilled. "They're talking about that night." But Assel refused to say a word about it. Lear pressed him. "Did you see Princess Aileen? Who did she talk to? What did she say?" Assel was silent for a moment before retorting, "Are you asking me as my teacher, or as an aide to Duke Wellington?" Seeing that he wouldn't talk, Lear threatened him. "If you don't speak, Duke Wellington won't protect you." Assel sneered. "I don't need his protection." Lear exploded. "Are you planning to rot in this backwater for the rest of your life?" Assel just laughed coldly. "I will paint Wellington's arrogance, Ilya's greed, Aileen's jealousy, and Adonis's cowardice. I will paint the sins that are hidden by power and wealth." Assel wanted to expose their crimes, and he knew his primary enemy was Wellington. He shot back at Lear. Will you agree to that? If it weren't for my desire to unmask those hypocrites, I would have followed Lady Stephanie to the grave long ago. Hearing this, Lear thought Assel had gone mad. As his teacher, he wouldn't report this to Duke Wellington, but he had to warn Assel to see the current political landscape clearly. By working for Wellington, he could use his power against the others. The words hit Assel like a bolt of lightning. After years of fighting alone, he realized he needed help. He decided to use Wellington. That night, I heard Princess Aileen speaking of Princess Stephanie with such venom. As for who her trump card was, I don't know. The only thing I heard was that Princess Aileen described him as a nobleman from the East. Sylvia was shocked. How could Aileen know someone from the East? Assel hoped that Princess Stephanie's spirit would tell him the truth. Even if he couldn't get revenge, he would document this grand crime with his brush. He swore he would find the evidence of how they had murdered Stephanie. Tears welled up in Sylvia's eyes. For 6 years, Assel had been willing to harm himself to prove her innocence. She was so grateful that besides Leo, there was someone else who still remembered Stephanie. But the truth was so absurd it was hard to believe. On the night before her coronation, Stephanie had discovered the affair between Aileen and Adonis. Out of love for her sister, she had offered to give Adonis to her. Aileen was stunned for a moment, then laughed awkwardly. "You're so good to me, sister. Why don't you just give me the throne too?" Stephanie thought it was a joke, never suspecting that it was Aileen's true desire. Because the older sister loved the younger so much, the younger sister wished she would disappear forever. Stephanie had always believed that love was just a bonus, nothing compared to the precious bond of family. If her sister loved Adonis, she was willing to give him to her. She never imagined that this act of kindness would become the greatest threat in their eyes, that her concession would become the blade that slit her own throat. That night, Aileen led Stephanie to the Naga pond. The guards had been deliberately moved away. Without warning, Aileen's dagger, laced with a venomous hatred, plunged into Stephanie's chest. "Sister," she hissed, "you will never understand what it's like to live in your shadow. Always get your leftovers to only be able to look up at where you stand. If you just disappear, everything will be mine, won't it?" Stephanie collapsed in a pool of her own blood, the warm liquid seeping into the mud by the pond. She stared at Aileen's twisted face, unable to understand, even in death, how the family bond she had cherished could have bred such monstrous hatred. As her consciousness faded, she heard Adonis's voice. "Did you have to do it yourself?" Aileen, panting, replied, "I have my ways of finishing this." Their footsteps faded as Stephanie struggled on the brink of death. Just then, she saw Ilya, her most beloved nephew. Stephanie reached out, thinking it was her last hope, only to be met with his icy, chilling smile. "My dear aunt, the moon must be beautiful when it's stained with your blood." Adonis's indifference and Ilya's sadism were two heavy blows that shattered her final hope. Someone grabbed her head from behind and forced it into the pond. As the cold water filled her nose and lungs, a low voice whispered, "No one can save you tonight." She didn't have the strength to open her eyes. She just suffocated, and then she died. After being reborn, she knew that the mastermind behind it all was Wellington, but her list of enemies was far longer than just the 4 she knew of. There were still many mysteries to solve. A small smile touched Sylvia's lips, but it didn't reach her eyes. She whispered to herself, "Wellington, when you orchestrated my murder, did you ever think that one day I would use your own bloodline to get close to you? I will teach him how to wield the power you cherish more than life itself. I will use my family's resources to pave his way. And when that child stands on the same level as you, I will have him personally destroy your political empire and push you off your pedestal. That will be my revenge on you." Assel's presence had drawn Leo's intense disapproval. He immediately called him in for a routine inquiry. "A tutor for the Wellington family? Since when do you provide round-the-clock supervision for your students? And why did you come to Vale City?" Assel replied calmly, "That's my private business." Leo scoffed, his words dripping with sarcasm. "Princess Stephanie's most fervent admirer has become Duke Wellington's honored guest. That's big news in the capital. Even I, all the way out here in Vale City, have heard about it. Do you want to know what they're saying? That a good dog will wag its tail for anyone." Assel couldn't take it anymore. When it comes to loyal dogs, who can compare to Lord Leo? It's a shame, though. The loyal dog has become a kindergarten guard dog, spending all his days playing games with little children. Leo shot back, "At least I'm not tutoring the child of my enemy." Hearing this, Assel shot to his feet, his voice filled with anger. "What do you know? Lady Stephanie saved me from ruin." From that moment on, I swore to use my brush as a weapon and follow her forever. I don't care about Wellington or Aileen. Sooner or later, before he could finish, Leo cut him off. Walls have ears, but Assel didn't care. I'm all alone. I have nothing to worry about. A moment later, he realized what Leo meant. Are you talking about little Sylvia? For Lord Leo to be so concerned about a little girl? Leo lowered his voice. If you know there was something wrong with the princess's death, then you should also know how many eyes are watching her former associates. Getting so close to that little girl so carelessly could get her killed. Assel was unfazed. I'm just being friendly to a little girl. Besides, you're here to protect her, aren't you? Don't tell me. You see her as a substitute for Lady Stephanie? Leo immediately and guiltily denied it. He remembered a month ago, when Assel had knelt and kissed Sylvia's hand. He hadn't spoken like this. He was the one who had called her a princess. Assel found the idea absurd. He couldn't believe Leo had woven such a fantasy from just a few of his words. He walked up to Leo and advised, "Don't be as foolish as you were before." Leo looked unconcerned. "Even if Sylvia isn't the princess, I still want to protect her." Assel sneered. "Since she has the good fortune to resemble the princess, perhaps she was sent by the heavens to help us. You should use her to attract the attention of those people in the shadows and get revenge for the princess." Hearing this, Leo lunged forward and grabbed Assel by the collar. "Are you insane?" Assel just laughed. "I'm not insane. I just know that anyone can be a chess piece for the princess's revenge. I won't be like you, hesitating just because she's some random little girl. Think about it, Captain.